Thanks for coming on, Adebanji.
You're most
and thanks for
welcome.
agreeing to chat with us.
Yeah.
It's lovely to be back in the studio here with you.
Yeah.
Because we've done 3 books with you now, which I'm sure we'll sort of touch on as we come.
Yeah.
But I think today we're just going to have a little chat about you, about your art, and about what you're looking to achieve with that.
Yeah. Well,
So these
go.
are some big questions to kick you off with.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So let's start right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me once that you used to sketch Roy of the Rovers.
Yes.
That was when you were a kid in Nigeria. Is
Yes.
that right?
Kid in Nigeria, but also in London.
Which
Yeah.
is where you were born.
Yeah. So maybe I would say around the age of 7, 1979, going to 1980. It was 16p. There's a lot of money then, so I got my mum to buy it for me, and I would literally sit there and draw every comic strip, every little drawing, and I tried to do it exact, so it took a lot of time, but that's where I started the journey of drawing, of doing this like as a passion. It really came through those days when I started doing Roy of the Rovers.
And I think you mentioned that football was your other passion.
Oh yeah.
And you could easily have gone the other way with that.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I had a cousin. He was supporting Arsenal, and then he just invited me over to his house, gave me boots, the kit, everything, and he made me just be Arsenal forever.
Yeah.
And I've been supporting Arsenal since '79, so you can imagine it's been a long journey.
Trip,
Yeah. So couldn't play it that well when I got into secondary school, but I was very good in commenting when the game was going on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I guess with that many years of experience of drawing,
Yeah.
by that point, you must have known that you had a talent for art.
Yes, I mean, it died a bit when I was in primary school, but when I got to secondary school, I had 2 great art teachers.
Yeah.
And these guys really nurtured us, got the best out of us, pushed us to the core, and made us have a healthy competition. That was it. We were about 10 of us that were really pushing ourselves, and that brought out the best. We didn't know we were doing that indirectly, but it made us keep improving when we come back from a holiday into a new term. So yeah. So that's where I knew I was getting into it.
I think that community of artists, that's something that when I've chatted with other artists, I've noticed that sometimes people have a very solo focused bit.
Yeah.
So I think that's a core part of being an artist. You are going to be on your own
Yeah.
doing a lot of art. But what I find unusual about your practice is just quite how inviting and open you are. You want other people to see you, to get involved.
Yeah.
You call yourself the Addictive Sketcher,
Yeah.
and I can absolutely see why, because you've built that habit. It's a
Yeah.
healthy habit. It's a good obsession.
Yeah.
And you started your own addictive sketching movement.
Oh yeah, so I've always had it at the back of my mind that because I know sketching has really helped me master painting. I've been on a lot of judging panels to look at work and give prizes. And the one thing that always stands out to me that's a strong point is when someone has good drawing. But I always feel for someone who had good color and everything else, but the drawing just let them down.
Yeah.
So it's always been my passion that, look, I want to make sure people can sketch. Because if you can sketch well, then you've broken down almost 60% of the painting process, because then it has a good foundation. The paint has a good foundation to sit on. So I decided, look, I'm going to start this movement. It's going to be an online school. And my target, my crazy target, is like 500,000 members all over the world. But I've got about 300 now, and I'm pushing them to the core, and we're killing it. So yeah, I'm happy about that.
I was going to say you're an absolute inspiration in terms of how your artistic drive has lifted you and taken you along.
Yeah.
Because you used to work at St Mungo's with a homeless charity before you turned professional.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that's a very different sort of environment to be in.
Yeah.
How did your artistic practice at the time carry on from there?
Okay, so St Mungo's, it was a lovely place in that my job and my role was to find the talents that homeless people had before they became homeless and make them get back into it and help them to develop any talent. So it could have well be someone who was into drawing before they became homeless. My job was to get them a volunteer who would spend time with them and teach them and do everything to bring back their self-esteem. And that really worked in miraculous ways. But while I was at St. Mungo's, I kept on working on my art. And what then happened was that after a while, I started winning art competitions, getting a lot of publicity, and I knew this was the moment I was not going to combine the two. If I was going to go into art, I was going to go into art fully. Yeah. So in 2008, I just put in my resignation letter. Boom, that was it. I had no experience. I would never say anyone should do that because the first 3 years with no business experience, I had no profit. But I'm thankful that I discovered a lady through my friend Carl Terry, Enid Lawson. And she kind of said, look, I'm not sure I can pay your mortgage, but if you paint this and this and that, I can sell it. And I'll never forget the day she sold one of my paintings. As then it was the most expensive. It was $6,450. And I can imagine coming from somewhere where I didn't make that amount with one painting. Yeah. So then my career just took off. So absolutely. Yeah, so it's been a journey. It's been an upward journey from St. Mungo's going on.
I imagine anyone watching this is going to be interested in you as an artist, but also I suspect they probably paint themselves, sketch themselves, have some sort of artistic experience. Yeah. And that story of how you went professional. Yeah. Could you expand a little more on what those early years were like and what official training you'd had? Yeah. Because you were at a technical school, is that right? It's now a university. It's the Yaba College of Technology. It's a higher institution. It was really focused practically on more of the vocational side, the practice side of the courses we did. And so they really put us through the rigors at Yaba College of Technology. I remember when we were chatting before, you mentioned quite how driven and drawn they were. And again, that sort of element of sort of friendly competition. Yeah, it happened again in Yaba because Yaba it's the best art school in Nigeria, but only the best get in there. Yeah. And they have that healthy competition again. The lecturers pushed us to the core, but that brought out the best in me in that it helped me to develop what I call a work ethic, a crazy work ethic. That's still helping me up till today. I was going to say, I mean, I think what is so striking about your practice is you make it a point, sketch every day. You got to. Having a flick through your sketchbooks just now, well, one of the things I love most about this is quite how informal they all are. They tend to be people you've seen on public transport, and you scribble down little thoughts, little notes, and it adds so much. And one of the little notes I just read was you saying, I wish I could paint as much as I sketch. Yeah. When do you feel that the painting side of your practice started to come in? When did you start practicing with oils and? So, I would say the first 22 years of my life, I hardly painted. I only drew. And getting to Yaba College of Technology at the age of about 22, we still weren't allowed to use oil paint, but they let us use gouache. Okay. Gouache was the big thing then. And then all of a sudden, when you get to the final 2 years, they let you use oil because by then they've known that you can handle the water-based stuff. Then they introduce you to oil. So I think once I hit oil and I smelt it and I felt it, I was like, this is going to be my medium for life because what you can do with oil is just amazing. So that's how I got in. It was at Yaba College of Technology. I really explored everything about oil. So I would say from the age of about 24 upwards, that's when I started using oil. Prior to that, it was dry-based medium, it was water-based mediums. But then once I got to my final 2 years at Yaba College of Technology, because you spend 5 years there,
Then I went for oil, and I just loved it. Right.
One thing we haven't touched on yet is the materials you use.
Okay.
In your sketchbooks, I know you favour biros,
Yeah.
like ballpoint pens, which I was really surprised by. But that immediacy and the fact you talk in one of your books, The Addictive Sketcher, about how you don't care what you're working on, just any bit of paper,
Yeah.
any pen, any pencil.
Yeah.
But if you were to advise someone on how to start, you want people to do this, how do they start? What materials do they need?
So for anyone that really wants to start, that really wants to do this, and they just want to give it a go, get yourself a simple sketchbook, something small, just like this, something handy. Why I say handy, look at my pocket. I got one in my pocket. Because it's like you're like this sniper. You pull out the bullet and then what I mean is that you've got to not put it somewhere away from yourself. In a bag is too far away. Because if you see something, you want to sketch it. So you need a sketchbook and you need some sort of pen. I would say pen. Why? Because it stops you from thinking you can always erase. So that's where the whole point of the ballpoint pen comes in. It just means that I can just open it, sketch, and the more I do this, the key thing I'm trying to improve, which I would say to anyone that wants to start off, is observational powers. We all have it, but it must be trained, it must be developed, and it can only be developed on a daily basis. So I'll put that one back right in there.
And I think this is where the discipline, your work ethic comes in. Because I think whenever I've sort of picked up a little notebook, it's been a really precious little thing. I haven't want to mark it. And you really taught me, no, just get going. Just
do
start.
it. Yeah.
But you start on page 1, you work all the way through. When it's finished, you start another one.
Exactly.
And you were talking about improvement and progress.
Yes.
Do you think it's valuable to have your old sketchbooks to hand, or would you recommend to people that they just stick with what they're working on now and never look at their old?
I would say you've got to always constantly refer to them. Why? It's because also it helps you to know how far you've come. And every little thing you've done in the past sketchbooks all feed into your muscle memory, your brain. You've got all this data. Like, I can't imagine how much data I have of people, faces, hands, foots, different poses. And this all comes in when I'm doing any painting, because even though I might be working from a photographic reference or from life, I can introduce anything at will because I've experienced all that in the sketchbook. Yeah. So the power is in the practice, and the sketchbooks are the data. And because you do this thing with your whole system, there's a way you can record that. And when you need it, your brain just flows. So I would say, yes, refer to them, go back and look at them. Sometimes you might look for a pose, a mood of someone. You might need something. Back to it, but always keep them fresh. Always keep them fresh, and use the book front to back. Like, I'm not leaving any spaces. I just want to make sure every little space is used as much as I can. And the goal is not to complete. Like, you can see, there's nothing here that shows it's complete. It's because they've gone. Once they move, I stop. There's no need to force it. It's all about observation, the immediacy.
It's one of the things that I really love about them is how they overlay and overlap. And while you do use ballpoint quite extensively, there's also a lot of tone in there. And we've spoken before, I think, about Tombow pens.
Tombow, yes. So my little way of introducing tone, because I know watercolors and anything that would involve water would be too cumbersome to take on travel. So I discovered these Tombows about 20 years ago now. I use the N75, N is for neutral, and N65. So it's a dark gray and a light gray, and I use 992 and 942. Those are just different shades of brown. So when I use a black ballpoint pen, I would use N75 and N65 for the Tombow, and they give me a nice tonal range. And when I use a brown ballpoint pen, I would use 992 and 942, and they're just different shades of brown. And they work like using pen and ink. Okay. But pen and ink without the flow, without the anything getting messed up. Everything's immediate.
That's a very good point. And that immediacy with those materials, your ballpoint, the Tombow pens, it means that you never have to stop. You don't have to stop to wait for something.
No, it doesn't need to. It's immediate, it dries, you move on. And that's beautiful. That's why I love it.
In stark contrast to the immediacy of the sketching, are oils.
Yes.
Now, being familiar with the way you tend to approach things, that sketching practice, that goes straight into your oil painting.
Yes.
So, but there must be a much longer process there. Is that fair? Or would you say oils are faster than people might think?
It depends. I've got two techniques on how I approach oils. The one that is faster is the outside in, where I start by blocking in quick shapes, making sure I get the bold shapes, and then I quickly finish on the inside. So outside in. And I use that a lot in plein air painting because everything's immediate. I'm right there, and I can use that sketching energy and sketching technique right there. But for more studio work like this one, which is more calculated, I would use inside out, which means I would have done the drawing and I start from somewhere inside and I just spread out. So I could have gone that way and that way and that way. And the key thing is that I'm working on the edges. I want to make sure I have lost edges, hard edges, and soft edges as I move along. And that's slower. And that gives me time to adjust things and make the work into a level of finesse and that. So it's two styles I have. Outside in for the more immediate and inside out for the slower, calculated, more finished kind of work.
I think that's going to be really interesting to the viewers, knowing that you almost consciously have two different styles, two different approaches with your oils. With the sketching, you've got lots of different ways to approach art. Do you think that's what helps keep it fresh and interesting for you?
Yeah, I just think as an artist, you've got to be able to have so many different ways you approach so that even you yourself, you're not bored by doing it the same old way. I also love looking at other artists' work. So I'd go to an exhibition, a gallery, or wherever the work is displayed, and I want to figure out, what did they do first? How did they approach this? I might want to try that. I buy artist books, I buy artist videos. I want to find out what are people doing? What can I just play around with that? So I'm always on my toes. At the moment, I have about 5 videos that I've not even watched, and they're of my stars and people I love. And I know once I watch them, it just gives me more, it adds more to the library that I already possess. So yeah.
I think that sort of generosity of spirit of you give a lot out to people, and you're also really keen just to hear from other people's ideas. How do you think other people have influenced your work? I mean, do you have any old master favourites?
Oh, yes.
And then perhaps we could talk a little bit more about your contemporaries?
Yeah, no, old master favourite is John Singer Sargent. At the moment, there's an amazing exhibition at Tate Britain, Sargent and Fashion. And if you really want to know how good this guy was, go to that exhibition. But if you really want to see who he really is, get any book that shows you his sketches, because Sargent said, you have got to keep your mind fresh. You have got to have a curious mind. You have got to sketch everything anywhere. And he was a portrait painter, but he said, even if you are a portrait painter, don't only paint or sketch faces. I want you to be able to sketch anything, anywhere. And that's why he was so adept in the subject matter he did. He did figures, he did architecture, he did landscapes. He was a guy, I would say, for me, when I'm talking about the past, it's John Singer Sargent, Anders Zorn, Joaquin Sorolla, those are my three favorites. And then the old school, probably Leonardo da Vinci, and then coming forward, I think the guy, that Rembrandt, because he was able to capture the human condition in a way I don't think anyone else has. So then moving forward to more contemporary, I have one master favorite, and I have never met this guy, but I've met him through his art videos and his books. Is Morgan Wiseling. Actually, I learned the inside out and outside in technique I'm talking about from Morgan. He shows it generously in 10-hour video titled Homework. Yeah, you can get that. Listen, watch it, learn from it. I've literally mauled it for about 10 years now. I think it's been out since 2005 or even I think later than that. But yeah, that's Morgan Wiseling is a standout guy who I would say. And then there's a guy, he's passed away recently, and he wrote a book on portraiture. It's called 29 Steps in Portrait Painting. His name is John Howard Sandin. If you can still get that book, get the book. He was a master in his craft, and he did it so well. And these are the guys that I learned from. And there's so many others. Nikolai Fekhin, Andrew Festin. These are current guys. Oh, Nikolai Fekhin is from the past. Andrew Festin still exists. He's in the Royal Society of Portrait Painters. And one other painter I think is just simply amazing, and I'm trying to think I've forgotten his name. I'll remember later on. But there's so many, and these guys make me feel like painting, yeah. I've remembered Kwang Ho. That's his name, yeah. I'm actually signed up in his own school. He has a school. It's called the Master of Fine Art. I'm in his Made for Artists. Sorry, not Master. Yeah. Made for Artists, MFA. And I sign up for these things because I know I can learn from these artists, and they influence my work.
One thing that we've touched upon but haven't expanded upon is subjects.
Yeah.
You talked about some of your inspiration being portrait artists.
Yep.
But you also mentioned how important they found it to study other subjects,
yes.
landscapes,
yes.
skyscapes,
yes.
scenery.
Yeah.
From your point of view, much of your daily sketching, I think, does that still happen while on transport?
No. So I have to be deliberate now, because what really fostered this habit also was that I lived in Kent and my studio was in Chelsea. Mm-hmm. So my commute from Kent to Chelsea gave me a lot of time to sketch people on the train. Now I don't have that much time because I live in Kent and my studio is also in my loft. So what I have to do is have deliberate away days where I go into London just to sketch. So I'm there on a mission. I could spend the next, say, 2 hours on the underground, and I have nowhere to go. What I'm doing there is sketching people. So yeah, so that's something that's
a hell of a commute.
Yeah, I go on the Circle Line.
I mean, we've sat together on the underground where you sketched.
Yep.
And I know one of the things you touch on in the Addictive Sketcher is some do's and don'ts of how to get started with sketching people.
Yeah.
I presume there have been a couple of times when people have asked you to stop, and you've always been very respectful.
Yeah.
Have there been any moments that sort of strike you as particularly funny or amusing?
Oh yeah, look, there's been, 2 times in about 25 years, my life has been at risk. And wow. I thought I'd never do this again. But my wife said, you ain't giving up. It's not about you, it was about them. They're probably having a bad day. I had to stop. Literally, it looked like they were coming for my life. Yikes. And I was like, no way, I'm not. I'm moving, I'm running out. So yeah, but 2 times in 25 years, that's a low percentage. Don't let that put you off. But there will be days when what you do is you look at someone and they look like trouble. Don't sketch them. Yeah. The people you want to sketch are the sleepers, the snorers, the readers, the scrollers.
They turn up so much, and I think
that's it.
So naturally posed. There's no sense of it being a formal portrait, and I think that's what gives your your sketchwork, but also your oils, that freshness,
Yeah.
and that ease.
Yeah.
Coming back to your experience of sketching people live,
Yes.
presumably for every sort of negative experience, there are lots of positive ones.
Oh, yes.
Do people ever ask to see what you're doing?
Yeah, no, so there's a technique I use. So if I was sketching you on the tube and you knew I was sketching, you now know I'm sketching you. So once you know, you might say, what are you doing? So just ask me.
Okay, so what are you doing there?
So before I answer you, I give you the book. So I sketch people and I do this because, and then I tell a little lie. I say, I've got this, and you watch my voice change. I've got this obsessive compulsive. Before I finish, they're like, oh, just sketch, just do it. Please, just get on with the business. And I just get on with the business. Because I've told them I've got an obsessive compulsive disorder to sketch. And now everyone's got this pity side of them today. Everyone feels for everyone, like, oh, sorry. But I am. I'm not actually, I've got this. I developed this. It's not a condition, but it's an acquired skill that has now become addictive and obsessive. So yeah, and I get it done.
That's a lovely way to put it. A lovely, positive way.
Yeah, and then what happens is that a lot of them then say, because, okay, the reason I started doing this back and front was that people then ask me, can you tear it out for me? But I'll say, oh no, there's another precious one at the back. Yeah. So with the advent of phones, they now snap the picture and then that would do, because I didn't like tearing the book, because I just tear them and then I don't have anything left. Yeah.
That's a very good point. In Addictive, which is effectively a complete reproduction of one of your sketchbooks.
Yeah.
There is one blank page in here, and you make the note that this is the only page you've ever torn out of a sketchbook.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah. So I think it was, it's somewhere in there. I'm looking at it now.
There we are.
There you are. So that's it. I'm looking at this and like, what sketch would have been in life here? I don't know. I can't remember what actually happened, but what I've written here is, this is the only time I've tore out a page out of this sketchbook, if I remember correctly. I think I met a lady on the train and she needed to get my details for an important commission or something. So I had to tear it out. Yeah. I had to tear it out because that's a commission, bro. You ain't gonna miss that. But apart from that, never. I'm gonna use it back and front and keep it going. Yeah.
Do you find you have favourites? So I remember when we made this a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That was the one.
Yeah.
You know, this is definitely the best representation.
Yes.
If we did the same thing again today, do you think it would still be that, or
it would still be this
latest
one?
Yeah.
I think what happened, this sketchbook was done in defiance to losing a very dear sketchbook of mine. I lost it, and I've lost so many, but that one was so dear to my heart. And before I got home, I said, no, I'm not gonna let that make me feel low. So the nearest shop was in Fulham Broadway, was Paper Chase. I just went in there, and this is exactly how Paper Chase produced those sketchbooks. I just bought it, the paper didn't feel right. Yeah, so when I first started, it didn't feel that good, and you can see how tentative the sketches here. They don't look that strong. I was really struggling with the colored pencil because the paper had a bit of a sheen. Right. But afterwards, you can see the difference just from this page, that it looks so pale and light, and all of a sudden, bang, I'm back to normal. I'm flowing with it, and then that's it. And I did some of my best sketches look at some I did in Geneva. So it's gone with me over this period. It was a very interesting period of my life, and I'm so happy that it's published for anyone to get and see and learn and see what inspires me and how I respond to daily living. Not all the sketches in the book are complete, but I can tell you, you can learn tons from the completed ones and the ones that are not complete. And I'm going to build on that. When I go to exhibitions, I love to see a lot of completed works, But I also love exhibitions where the artist hasn't finished the work. There's one piece like that in a Sargent exhibition that I've gone to, and it just shows you how he started off. And I think I learned more from that, because when you see the finished piece, you don't know what happened, how they progressed, how the work, you know, has gone from one sketch stage to the other. But just seeing a work that's not complete, oof, you learn tons.
I know exactly what you mean, because a finished painting which is polished and presented and controlled by the artist, that can be really inspiring.
Yeah.
But when the artist wants to involve you
Yeah.
and leave some bits unrefined,
Yeah.
some edges
Yeah.
lost, but also literally some of it unpainted,
Exactly.
unworked,
Yeah.
it really helps invite you in and sort of makes you feel as a viewer,
Exactly.
that's what I want to do. I'm involved in this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what helps your work be so engaging.
Yes.
Sketches in particular.
Yeah.
But I think it also applies to your oil work.
Yes. Yes.
One thing we haven't touched on yet is the City of London. Where you were born, it's where you lived your early years.
Yes.
You went to Nigeria, then came back.
Yep.
And then you were studying at Heatherley.
Yes.
And when I met you, you had a studio up in Chelsea.
Yeah, on Lots
You
Road.
had up until relatively recently.
Yeah, onto the pandemic. Yeah.
London is in all of your sketches.
Yes.
It's in a huge amount. While I know you also have a deep love for the city of Bath,
Yeah.
do you want to speak a little bit about London, how important it is to you?
So London just happens to be where I've lived for so long. I mean, when I came back to the UK in 1999, the first place I lived was in Peckham, then I moved to Bermondsey, and even in Belvedere, it's still regarded as London and a whole. It's just that there's so many iconic places, and some of those places, they've hardly changed over the years. And what I like is that you can capture somewhere and you have reference points of other painters in the past that have painted those scenes, and then you're looking at what you've done and what they've done and the changes that have happened. Say, for instance, I could be on Waterloo Bridge and I could be looking into St. Paul's and the city, and you can see other painters that have painted it when all these little other buildings that are skyscrapers hadn't been there. So you've got so much material, and London can never be at its best or its best when it's a rainy day. You've got red buses, reflections on wet pavement. That is just a feast. It's a spectacle. And you can't, you as a painter, you cannot but find material in London to paint. It's just so iconic and well known all over the world. Colorful. Yes, there's some gray days, and that always wins my heart. So almost, I would say 40% of my paintings are London paintings, just paintings of scenes of everyday people in London.
We've spoken a bit about St. Paul's Cathedral and other iconic areas
Yeah.
in London.
Yeah.
But one of the things that struck me about when we came up to shoot Painting People and Places,
Yeah.
your oil painting,
Yes.
is how the local area was also really critical to you. You don't just paint those sort of iconic scenes.
Yeah.
There was a particular underground station.
Yeah.
I remember we sat out and sketched. I think for
We went
Sketcher.
we went past Sloane Square.
That's it.
Yeah, Sloane Square, because every time I come out of the tube, I have to take a bus from Sloane Square down to Lots Road in Chelsea, and that now became one of my favorite spots to paint in. Sloane Square, there's a lovely statue there, a water fountain. Actually, in the Addictive Sketcher, I do a watercolor sketch of that scene, and I also do a study of the station. It was raining on the day, so that's also in the Addictive Sketcher book. Yes, it's the iconic, but it's also the mundane, the day-to-day stuff, the places that are local to me. I must have painted and sketched Chelsea loads of times, and you can see some references to that in my book.
And on that, on plein air,
Yes.
when you're painting outside or sketching outside, you show a real dedication to your craft. Because having sort of been with you with my little notebook, feeling absolutely freezing on a winter's day, you were lying on the concrete, looking up at a busker, painting, sketching. And for anyone who wants to try working outside, do you have any advice? Would you ever try with oils outside? Would you pick another medium?
Yes, so I do. I use mostly my sketching mediums, which is graphite, colored pencils, and Tombows. I can use them, but I also use oils, and I also use acrylic, and I also use gouache. Look, I'm using everything. The reason is it depends on what I want to do with the painting. Some of them might just be studies. Some of them might be tending towards a proper finished gallery painting. But irrespective of what I am doing, the key thing for anyone who wants to do this thing called plein air is just go out there and have fun. I think if that's the thing that moves you, what happens is that it now becomes a sport. Mm-hmm. It's a new sort of sport, one that keeps you fit, one that also, helps you with your life it pays off, but also it's just a love affair that can keep you healthy for years to come, because anything that gets you to stop scrolling and gets you out of the house must be a blessing in today's world. So, plein air, go for it. Get out there, get the vibes from nature and from people and explode. That's what I'll say.
We've spoken a bit about how you advise people just to get sketching.
Yes.
Just to get moving, just to get painting. Just do it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Don't get caught up with expectations of what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And immediacy is important. When it comes to the online medium, because I think it's natural today that people want to show off their work, want to display it, or at least record it. You're on Instagram,
yes.
You're on Facebook.
Yep.
Whereabouts would you recommend, or do you find works for you to display your work online?
I think Instagram is great. I think it's really great. I would say Instagram, because it's very hands-on, easy for people to see your work, easy for them to send messages if they want to buy. And also you can also do videos and reels. When I say reels, I just mean shorter clips of you in progress. Because what you want to do with your viewer is you also want to engage them on your life as an artist on this journey. Because people are not only going to buy your work or be interested in your work by seeing the finished piece, they want to see what interests you. What are the things that feed into that final piece? So you're literally documenting your life. And we can do that because we have phones nowadays. Nowadays, I move around with this mono tripod. I can set it up anywhere or put my phone on, and I'm just sketching, and I can show you a little behind the scenes of me sketching. So you can see what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And then when you see a finished piece, you can see how things have progressed towards getting to the finished piece. So yeah, that's a blessing of the technology side of things and working that into social media. Facebook is also great. I would say Facebook, even TikTok, and I say this because the whole young generation is there. Yeah. So you want to explore these things, put yourself out there, because you never know who is going to discover you. I've got discovered more and more times from social media than any other, I would say, outlet today, because the whole thing has shifted towards social media now. So go for Instagram. I'm Addictive Sketcher on Instagram. Find me there, see what I'm up to, and let's roll.
The flip side of that is the very traditional approach. Now, one thing that I think last year you were elected president of the Royal Institute of Oil Painters.
Yep.
You've been the vice president for how many years?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And so moving up to the presidency must have been a great feeling, because I can imagine that is reaching the pinnacle.
Yeah. So look, I never knew I would become the president, but one thing I did know was that I loved the Royal Institute of Oil Painters, because that's where I got my first big breakthrough. When I was younger, I say 35, I'm 52 now, they had this competition. It was the Young Winsor Newton Young Artist Award. And at the age of 35, which was the last, now it's 30, I'm lucky, in my time it was 35, is the last time you can take part in it. And I won the first prize. And ever since winning that first prize in 2008, I'm thinking, wow, for me to win that prize, it meant so much to me. So I determined at the back of my mind that I'm going to want to become a member of the Royal Institute of Oil Painters. Now, that was a dream then, but I just believed that it was possible. I had to work so hard, put in work. I got a lot of rejections. It took me 9 years in total to become a member, from 2008 to 2017 to become a full member. But eventually when I become a full member, I had so much built up, a lot of a reputation of being someone actively involved in the society, by first of all becoming a provisional member, associate member, and then a full member. And all the while I was doing this, I was also taking the Royal Institute of Oil Painters into schools, because I was an education officer, helping the children in schools to know more about oil painting and all that. So I'd proven myself over the years to be someone not only painting, but active in promoting the society. But never did I know that one day the opening would happen where they need to elect a vice president, and I got elected. And then since being the vice president, you know, it was like automatic to become the president unless someone decided to go head to head. But no one decided to go head to head with me. I just got the post and I'm like, I need to do my 5 years, 4 years more and hand over to Haiti Joe.
Having spoken about Haiti Joe Summers, who's the vice president of the Royal Institute of Oil Painters, there are a lot of very talented artists.
Oh,
there.
yes.
And I imagine it must be a wonderful forum for an oil artist to meet other oil artists.
Oh,
and compare
yes.
notes.
Oh, yes. Look, this is the one thing that the Royal Institute of Oil Painters helps us as artists, is that one, when you want to become a member, you have a lot of other artists that you aspire to be like. Like you're looking at their work and you love it, so it makes you work harder. Then when you get into that society, you have these other artists that, you know, you're open now to the way they work. You can visit them, they inspire you, you see what they're doing, and that alone keeps you going. I always tell people you can't run this artistic journey on a solo. You've got to have a group. You've got to have a tribe, people of like-mindedness, people that can keep you on your toes. Like if I see Haiti Joe is doing something and she's making waves, I'm like, what am I doing, bruv? And I see Rob Poynton, he's killing it with his wonderful plein air work. And then I'm looking at Tim Benson's portraits and I'm like, whoa, you cannot remain the same. You're all together, you're pushing each other, and that's how the standard becomes higher and something to aim for.
So it's like when you're a kid and you've got that small class, you're all pushing each other, you're still there, even when you're right at the pinnacle.
It's the same way, it's the same way. It continues all the way through. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your books for a short bit.
Yes.
That's how I've come to know you. Through editing.
Exactly. Yeah, you're the editor of the 3 books.
So
I couldn't have done it without you, though.
It's been fun to put them together, and it's been lovely to see how successful they've all been.
Yes.
And I know that in the same way that you continue to sort of drive yourself on and think yourself up, you focus in the Addictive Sketcher, which was your first book, on the importance of sketching in various media.
Yes.
Addictive, which we've spoken about.
Yep.
That's just a reproduction of one of your sketchbooks.
Yeah.
To give people an insight.
Into
what the lessons of the Addictive Sketcher do.
Yes, exactly.
And then from there, you worked on painting people and places.
Yeah, that's the first oil book. This one is the first oil book. I must say, I would say everything that I've done in Addictive Sketcher and that you can see me practice here, this is where they get translated into color. And yeah, it shows, anyone that picks this up will see that every painting in this book started with a solid drawing, a solid sketch. And that's what I want people to understand from the sketching book, Addictive Sketcher, to seeing a whole sketchbook published and now see how they translate the skills you develop, how it can translate into finished paintings. That's why I've decided to do people, painting people and places, capturing everyday life in oils. I think there's a connection all the way through.
I was going to say, and that variety of subjects, because it's everything from portraits to
figures,
groups of people,
urban landscapes, landscapes. Yeah. So it covers everything, right?
One thing that I think is a particular favourite of mine are your crowd scenes.
Oh yeah, I love crowd scenes.
Now, it strikes me that I would not have the first idea of where to begin, because you've got some really beautiful, striking crowd scenes, particularly of the underground, of escalators full of people coming up. Yeah, really striking, very memorable. Could you talk a little bit about how you would tackle painting a crowd scene?
So crowd scenes for me, people ask, why do you paint crowd scenes? How did you get inspired by crowd scenes? Well, I saw a painting by John Singer Sargent, and it's titled Gassed. It's in the Imperial War Museum. It's a massive painting, and it shows soldiers. They've all been sprayed with this crazy mustard gas, and some of them are blindfolded and they can't see where they're going. There's about 100 figures in that painting. When I saw that painting, I'm like, I've got to do crowded scenes, because I like how each figure was given attention. My passion is faces. So the only reason why I'm doing crowd scenes is to have another avenue of giving faces attention. So the way I start is literally, I would go somewhere, and this is just to keep my juices flowing, it's just to use organic lines to fill up crowded scenes. But then when I want to do a painting, the first thing is to take about 50 pictures of any sort of crowded scene. But then out of those picture references, I choose the one that strikes me the most, has the best composition, because I don't like tweaking the pictures in Photoshop. I want it to be natural. So I would draw and sketch everything out and then go with the inside out gradually, figure by figure, person by person, and then move across the painting until everything. That's how I approach the
Sitting in the studio down here where you worked through one of these street scenes with a crowd, I was absolutely astonished by the way you worked, because you worked at this beautiful sketch, full of tone, full of shape, everything cleanly laid out. And then you put masking tape down.
Exactly.
And with a little grid over the top, you literally painted each little square, and it built up almost like a mosaic.
That's it. You couldn't have said it better. That's how I do it. It's one shape, one tone, one, just a little shift in the figure. And when you see everything in the end, it all adds up. If you're focusing, and if that's the technique, if you don't get carried away by, oh, it's a hand, it's an arm, it's a leg, but just the shapes that combine together to produce a whole, like the whole way the painting flows, then at the end it just all pops. And that's probably what happened when we finished the whole thing. We worked in sections, one section, two section, three section, four, and in the end it all just comes together.
Absolutely. And you talk a lot about the composition. It's every single stage, from getting those photographs, getting it onto the canvas or the board, and then what mixes you're using. And I think that we've spoken about your sketching materials, but your oils. Let's talk about the oil paints, the brushes you use. Do you have particular favourites? Have you experimented with lots?
So the oil colours I love the most are produced by Michael Harding and Winsor & Newton. Just love them. Just really love them, and the quality of the paint. I also use a medium called Maroja, which is not widely spread. I think it's a very good medium. It gives the paint body color in pastel, and I mix that with liquin in pastel. I developed this on my own. It just gives the paint some chunks of texture and weight. And so that's my love, and I love artist quality oil. I know we can use other ones to cut corners on the price, but there's nothing like pure pigment in that binding medium of linseed oil. When it's original and it's good, wow, there's nothing like it. So for oil, it has to be Winsor & Newton or Michael Harding. And then sometimes I sneak in Robertson's because I like the texture too. But when it comes to brushes, I like Rosemary and I like Pro Art. I'm a big fan of Filberts. I love Filberts. I think...
So for anyone who's unfamiliar with filbert brushes, could you just explain some of the different types?
Yeah, so the filbert it's not flat. It's shaped like this finger because it has a rounded edge. So with the rounded edge, you're not always getting square cuts. You can get square cuts if you want them, but it's more, I would say, more sympathetic with your touch, that it doesn't make everything rigidly square. You can round things off and you can get knife edge strokes. So a filbert is a blessing in disguise. I love them, and I can't. And then finally, for my final little bits of details, I would use a rigger, and a rigger is just a very pointed, round brush, mainly the ones we use for watercolor. Yeah, and I would use them with oil just to finish off the details, because then those are the ones that I love.
Let's talk a little bit about your work on television.
Okay.
You've done some work for 4OD, you've done some work for The One Show, most famously.
Yep.
So how did you get into that?
Oh, The One Show, it was a crazy thing. Okay, I'll explain it. People kind of like say, how did that happen? So I won a competition in London in 2013. It's called Pinta Rapido. And you paint a scene in one day, and the next day you exhibit the work, and they get a reputable judge in, and he kind of chooses the winner. Ken Howard was actually the guy who was chosen for the first one in 2013, and he awarded me the first prize. Now, the guy who runs this thing, Roger Beckett, noticed that the numbers of people taking part in the competition started to drop from 2013. So he got in contact with The One Show so that the winner in 2013, which is myself, can go on TV and tell people how good it is to win. And even if you don't win, you can sell your work on the next day. But I think The One Show, they got the script mixed up, and they said this is UK's fastest painter, and he's going to paint Carol Baker on the piano. He's going to paint those 6 wrestlers, and he's going to paint Chris Evans, because that was Chris Evans' last day on The One Show. He's going to paint Chris Evans on the green sofa. And I'm looking like, oh my days. I never knew. And because it was live TV, I'm like, bring it on. So I started painting. I didn't know The One Show was only 30 minutes. So I started, and they said, is it finished? I'm like, finished? I ain't even got going yet. They said, don't worry, we'll find a way to tell the viewers that it went whatever. I felt so depressed after that show. But all of a sudden, after that show, I'm getting people saying, can you present this for us? Can you present that for us? That I like the way you did. And I'm like, what? And my wife says to me, you ain't gonna turn that down, go take it. I said, I don't have any experience in presenting. She says, but they're telling you to present, go for it. So that's how I've just said, yeah, I can do it. And they'll give me a script, and I'll master the script, and I'll go in there, and that's how I've aced it for 9 years now, 2015 to date. I kept doing this, no interview, no job. They even don't know what to call me. Sometimes they call me artist in residence. Sometimes they call me The One Show artist. Sometimes they say whatever, because there was no role, but I get paid. That's all that matters. So, so that's how I got into The One Show.
You've been all over the UK.
Yes, going over, meeting different people, important people, normal people, finding out about what they do. And sometimes I do a little bit of painting and drawing with the presenting, which is very unique. I'd never seen that done before. So everything was carved out of just sheer, I would say, luck.
Well, it's clearly stuck well with you, because
one
of the things I remember seeing was one for Channel 4,
Yes.
where you were asked to reproduce the Mona Lisa.
That was stressful.
Again, that must have been a tall order.
Yeah.
It was to do in a month. While it took Leonardo years.
Yeah.
But it must have introduced you to some interesting ideas, like creating your own oils.
Yes, look, the whole procedure, I had to meet the specialist, every specialist in Leonardo, I met them. From a guy in Cambridge who just, his life work is on Leonardo, to people who actually make the pigments from earth colors, to people who actually study the science behind his painting procedure. I met all these guys and they all fed me with the information I would need to produce this masterpiece. Even to the board he used, they had to make that for me because he used a particular panel from a particular tree. So they got that all sawed up and made for me. And I was on stress level 9, like, because that's not the way I paint. He paints in layers. It's indirect painting. He builds up the layers slowly and steadily, and I went into a fix. But in the end, I did finish it, and it somehow did work well because the specialists came and saw the exhibition at Pantheon Hall, and they were impressed. But boy, I was stressed. So, but it was great. It gives people the insight on how Leonardo really went from painting it from the beginning till the end. I take them on that journey.
Absolutely, and I think that speaks about how the idea of an artist has moved from a professional craftsman who's creating all their own materials, having to go through all sorts of practical challenges.
Yeah.
And now things can be parceled up so that you can be so immediate.
I know.
Lovely to have that experience.
Yeah.
I bet you're pleased with tube paints.
Oh yes.
Pre-made
I
panels.
actually heard they used to put these paints in animal bladders at one point and tie them up. So I don't know what that would have felt like, but it's nice to have them in tubes now, you know, and take them anywhere you want and just press them out and paint at ease. Yeah.
Let's just talk now about the end of any sketchwork, any painting.
Yeah.
Having something complete. Now, whether that's closing your sketchbook so that it's just for your personal reference, or whether it's painting for display. You're a commercial artist and you sell your work.
Yes.
So that must come with getting it in front of people.
Yes.
We've spoken about how to do that online.
Yeah.
But I know you've got a good relationship with the mall galleries up in London.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk a bit about how to get your work into galleries, how to approach people?
Yeah. So literally, the first thing you've got to know, and I say this to anyone, you've got to know if you're woken up in your dream and people say, what do? You should be able to, in 1 minute, kill it, because that might be your 1 minute that will sell you. So I paint people and places. I have that love to capture everyday life. So if you're looking for a portrait, a figurative composition, an urban landscape, or a landscape to be painted, I'm the guy to do it for you, and I can do it to a standard that will really convince you. I've knocked it off. People should be able to say that. Something about themselves that gives the world an introduction to who they are and what they stand for. How do you get into galleries? There is never any one way, but one way I know that you don't have to go through the door is to go through competitions, because a lot of competitions happen in London or in the UK every month. Most of them are open competitions. They always have an opportunity for you to enter the competition. Sometimes the work's going to be exhibited, and also you might win some money too. But then you gain publicity. That's my route. I started winning competitions like crazy. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting publicity. I'm writing articles in magazines. And gallery owners want to see fresh talent. They want to see who are the emerging artists. So they would buy these things and find out, okay, we like that guy. Word of mouth also happens. This is how I got into most of the places I was able to get in. It's either word of mouth or they saw my work in a magazine me writing an article, me winning a competition. That's just the way I've done it. I would say the most organic way. The hardest way is to just walk in confidently and say, this is my portfolio, do it that way. But that is cold calling at its extreme. I could not handle that. It would be too much. I could do it the other way, go to an exhibition, see the works that win, see the works that stand out, see the works that win prizes, the works that get like some, even not the first award, second, third award, honorable mentions. Work at bringing your work to that level, or find the guys that win and see if they're running workshops or written books or done something that, you know, you can say, okay, if my work's not at that level, I need to pitch it to that level. That should be my goal. Once you can get your work up to a level where you feel that, I'm now at that stage, the one thing you need to do is just enter. There's so many. Put your work in there, and even though you get rejections, which you will always get because they're not machines. Someone could look at your work today and say, wow, that's amazing. Tomorrow they may be having a bad day and they'll look at that work and they say, sod it. Boom, that's the way it works. So it's a game. They've been doing this for ages. Look at the Royal Academy. Yeah. People have been entering the Royal Academy for ages. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you've got to be in it to win it. And that's my philosophy, and that's how I get my work out there. And I'll encourage anyone to do the same. You've got to be brave. You've got to be brave. You've got to ask for feedback, and you've got to be willing to learn when you're given the feedback.
Let's talk a little bit about the size and format of the work you use. You produce some larger pieces, but a lot of your work is produced on board, quite small size, almost postcard size.
Why I do them on this side, with this size, is that I just believe that I can get more done in a shorter space of time. And I can go through a lot of these, maybe one a day. And what it does, it just keeps you working without the pressure of having to use too much paint and without the pressure of having to complete something large. So small, I know people say size matters. It doesn't really in this case. You can do something small like this and you can get a lot done. But the key thing is the improvement you make along the journey. The mileage is so important. And if you can do this so well, you can do anything well.
Do you think that it's that sense of immediacy and achievement?
Exactly.
Because you've spoken about how your sketching is all done, some are left unfinished because the person moves on.
Yes.
Your paintings, you deliberately, as with this one, you've left some pieces unfinished.
Yes.
In order to draw people in.
Yes, that's what I've done,
With the smaller paintings, it's presumably quicker to get things done.
Yes.
Does that lead back into that idea of alla prima?
Alla prima, yes. These will all take place in between 90 minutes to 3 hours. No more, no less. You know it's done. So it just helps you to know I've got a time for this, I can budget that time, and I can get it done, and I can move on to the next thing. There's no better way to train.
So then again comes back to that idea of that work ethic.
That's the work ethic.
Do you find, because you've spoken about competition, friendly competition with your peers and other people, do you find that you are self-competitive? Do you try and push yourself every day? Yeah,
that's the only way you can do it. It's you against you. It's me against me. It's like I want to be a better version of myself every day. And you can't do that by just being relaxed. You have to do that by being on your toes, by being on your A game, and by making sure you keep those brushes wet. That's the only way forward. Anything apart from that, I don't know what you're doing.
And talking about going forward.
Yes.
What are your aims? As you were coming up, you wanted to get out there, you wanted to get your paintings in front of people. You've moved your way up through the ranks, you've won competitions, you've driven yourself all the way. You've written books, you've written articles for magazines, you're on podcasts like Ask an Artist, where you talk about the commercial side of your work. What do you want to do in the future? You've taught a lot. Do you want to continue doing that?
Yeah, so I would really like to expand my school, the Addictive Sketchers movement. It's starting small at the moment. I hope it will become a real school, not just online, but a school that will be a massive building where you get in there and you can transform your representational art to another level. Hopefully I'll get there. And I want this school to be the Addictive Sketchers movement, like a massive school where people hear about it all over the world, and they send their children over to go study with that crazy sketcher guy. And I also want to act. I want to act in films now. I don't know where that's going to happen, but I always visualize things. I know someone's going to come knocking on my door and they're going to need a sketcher for a particular film, and they don't want to brace it. They're going to look for the key guy and they're going to say, that's the guy to do it. Because most recently, what will I say? Where hasn't the sketching taken me? I went to the Westminster Hall to sketch the King and Queen this time last year on the 2nd of May before they had the coronation. What were they looking for? Because you can't take paint into Westminster Hall, it's dry media. So what, they're contacting me saying, oh, Mr. Adebanji, we need you to come in and sketch the visit of the King and Queen to the whole Westminster Hall, meeting the MPs. And I'm shaking, but I did it. And now they have 4 of my sketches, 2 in the House of Commons permanent collection and 2 in the House of Lords permanent collection. What takes me there? Sketching. So I want to make sure I take this, my goal is to take sketching everywhere and make it to become a new sport. That is why I've got Adidas with the Addictive Sketcher. They haven't signed me yet, but I don't wait for the signing. I get it done before the time. So if you're looking at me, Adidas, now, let's make this a collaboration sport, bruv. Now, then the final thing is, I just want to make sure every student in schools, that's why I go a lot into schools. I want to make sure every student in schools, whether you're an art student or not, should be able to draw. The fun there, the beauty of it, the confidence it gives you. And I bring study skills with art. People say, how do you do that? The whole concept of doing mind maps is all about the ability to use the right side and the left side of the brain for people to remember things easier. And I do this the same way I plan my books, the same way I plan things when I need to give speeches. People can use those skills to remember information. So those are my plans for the future, and hopefully you're gonna see me make that happen. Show them.
One final question then.
Yes.
Before we close up.
Yes.
If you could paint one person, living or dead, who would you pick and why?
It will be David Goggins. David Goggins. This guy is the hardest guy in the world. He wrote 2 books, Can't Hurt Me, and I forgot the name of the other one, but Can't Hurt Me. Oh, Unfinished. If you haven't read those books, Can't Hurt Me and Unfinished, it's about the life story of a Navy SEAL who became one of the hardest men in the world. Why do I like him and why would I want to paint him? Because this guy is an epitome of what discipline is all about. He trained himself from someone who could hardly read or write, overweight, couldn't do much for his life, and he trained himself to be an ultra marathon runner, to join the Navy SEALs. He's done incredible stuff with his life, and reading his story, he doesn't give you the room to give excuses. And that has been the way I've run my life for so long. I've always given excuses. So if I could meet that guy and sketch him, it would be David Goggins, man. Goggins, if you're listening, I gotta paint you, bruv. Let's do it. Let's talk.
You heard the man there. So thanks very much, Adebanji.
You're
it's
most
been a
welcome.
real pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. That was really good.